So the dance artists could just meet online before and then start collaborating at the festival when they met at the festival. I had one more, actually more exciting thing to say, but maybe I can say that later.
Okay, come with the exciting.
No, okay.
With the exciting.
No, it was. I can just briefly mention actually this. It's a bit bigger project called, just so you know, called Dance Tech. A big project that was launched in 2007 by the artist and producer Reumert Salon. And this is a really interesting project that's going on and that has around 5,000 members who are active and making exchanges internationally, and a lot of things is going on there. So dancetech.net, I think, just to check it out if you want to. So I'll just quit there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have got some examples of how digital strategies can be used as a way of sharing communication, as a way of documentation, and yeah. But I would still like to press this a little further. I would also like to see it as an artistic tool used, I mean, creatively as a tool of co-creation. Maybe you can go out the more ethical aspects of working in a global context.
And it's not that digital. And I feel a little bit in a dilemma because I'm someone believing very much in redistribution of power. And I have this feel that there's really an audience now that should come to work and to put questions. But as I now have the stage, I will use it for 10 more minutes, and then I think we will distribute the power to you. So I have decided that I will share some of the women that I have worked and met in my last 6 years within Global Stories with you. And my main questions are: how can we as stage artists collaborate with those we don't know or don't understand? And how can stage art reach out to other sectors, for instance NGOs and activism? And then, quite a big one, how can we move and develop the whole European concept of a national theatre? So, 3 quite big questions for 9 minutes, yeah. But I'll just reflect on them with you and these women. And the first one here to the left is a Swedish feminist, activist and dramaturg called Gunilla Edemo. And the morning of May 26th was the morning after the European Parliament election. And in Sweden, the SD, the Sweden Democrats, the extreme right-wing party, had received almost 7% of the votes. And Gunilla posted this on her Facebook. Hello, if any of my friends have voted for SD, will you then please contact me? I'm sad and worried about the future, and I need to understand what kind of society you are longing for. Maybe an hour's coffee? So this post has been shared a lot, and I do assume that it has led to some coffee meetings. And what does this have to do with stage art? In a way, I think it was a lot easier like 30 years ago when I was an actress and director, when we could very safely depict the capitalist with a cigar. But we have all now learned that it's a structure, we're part of it, and we cannot stand outside and criticize. It gives no meaning. We have to be within, we have to hold the discussions, we have to unfold them. We need to challenge the binary positions, be it good or bad, be it capitalist, be it nationalist. And I believe that we really need to avoid cynicism and sarcasm. Because I think we need to legitimize our own existence as stage artists, to be in very close collaborations with people that we don't necessarily identify with and that we don't understand. The second woman, Malika Sarabhai, is, I saw her first time as a wonderful dancer in Peter Brook's Mahabharata 35 years ago. And Malika is now the director of Dapana Academy of Arts, which is a marvelous institution in Ahmedabad in northern India. They have a lot of study facilities, an outdoor amphitheater, and a range of interdisciplinary work. They produce professional performances, wonderful, together with her mother, who's now 93, was a dancer for 70 years. And they also run a department called Dapana Development, which run educational campaigns of health, non-violence, and reproductive rights. Campaigns where stage art is used as a communication tool, and work that has finally made Malika rename what she's actually doing. And she decided that she's now an artivist. And in Global Stories, we've collaborated with Malika around the production of some embroideries made by a group of surrogate mothers. This was a side project to a performance made in India, and it was a project which also involved collaboration with a big NGO for informal women workers. And this side project ensured, on the one hand, that the surrogate mothers whose stories we tell in the performance actually had a real benefit, economically, socially, and that they were given the possibility of representing themselves in another way than the interviewed victim. And Mana has put us this question relevant: is there a risk of art becoming merely a social tool? And the question does remind me of the very many times where I have been asked, why do you do political theater? And I think it's a meaningless question. I'm not saying your question is meaningless, but this question is really meaningless because all theater is political. And theater which is not somehow working for social, political change is maybe the most political of all, as it is a very important part of reproducing the same patterns, supporting the existing power structures. So I'm convinced that we have to overcome this modern, which is quite modern actually, separation of art, audience, politics and social space. I think we need to reach out to new audiences and to new collaborators within social and educational life, if we want to be part of creating a new social reality. And if we choose not to do that, I think there's a very big risk that stage art will be just a small, national, closed zone for white middle class. The last woman here is Diane Taylor. You can see what says behind her, the text. She's giving a lecture called Politics of Passion, Activists Take to the Streets. And she is a professor of drama in New York, and she initiated and co-founded in 1998 the Hemispheric Institute of Performance and Politics. And this institute is, I'll read, a collaborative, multilingual and interdisciplinary network institutions where artists, scholars and activists throughout the Americas are working together. The institute is anchored in its geographical focus on the Americas and in the three working languages, English, Spanish and Portuguese. And the goal is to promote collaborations at the level of scholarship and art practice among practitioners interested in the relationship between performance and politics in the hemisphere. And you can say this I think that the Zapatistas in Mexico, inspiring performance artists in North America, really gives a lot of meaning. And I was last year in Stockholm. I went to a seminar called Weaving Politics on dance and politics. And I remember one lecture by André Blepicki, who also works within the frames of this Hemispheric Institute. And he was analyzing the choreography of the police during the ongoing demonstrations in Spain and Greece. And this was extremely inspiring for the whole audience to watch this as a choreography. Was an understanding lecture both in politics and in art, and I think as relevant for potential activists as for artists. I think inspired by the thinking behind this institute, which is connecting around 75 institutions in Northern and Southern America, that we need to rethink this whole concept of a national theatre in Europe. This was originally founded as a vehicle for a common national identity. And I'm really curious about how we can stimulate new transnational stage art institutions and networks, because I think we need new transnational identities also represented on stage. And I think in Europe, with the recent parliament election, that the nationalist question and issues is something that we really have to deal with, not necessarily just as a topic, but very, very consciously about how we represent on stage. So I want us to think in more European theatres and not necessarily national theatres. Concluding, I think actually that we as stage artists at this, which I feel like Mona is I don't know, maybe it always felt like that, and maybe it's staged by someone, as you suggested, but this historical moment of crisis, it seems as, that we have a really incredible option and a huge responsibility of redistributing power. Because we can quite easily introduce unheard voices, we can invent new models of collaboration inspiring other sectors, and we can create sensitive connections between knowledge, activism, and audiences. My time has gone, and at last I need just to make a very short advertisement, because we're all part of the market. And we are playing Made in India in a new English touring version this Friday and Saturday at Theatre Group, and I hope to see many of you here. And this is Amrita Panda. She's very dark, she's not that dark in real life. She's an Indian sociologist and performer who's on stage. So thank you.
Maria, you were sort of mapping out a new landscape for the performing arts, and a more socially oriented one, where, as I understand you, ethics is an integral part of being aesthetic or creating aesthetic work. So, a new map where these binary oppositions they're no longer valid. And this could actually bring us back to the starting point of Alexandros, when he was sort of confronting the view of art as a commodity, with art as a liberating force of trying to get access to the human enigma. But actually, I think I would like to proceed in the spirit of Ditte Marie Bjerg and empower the audience and redistribute the power to the floor. So if any of you has an opening question to put to any of these panel members, anything that really struck you during these presentations that you'd like to get an answer to. No? Yeah?
I was very provoked about the mobile being present, but I think it connected in a very good way with what you said, Alexandros, about maybe even the narcissistic standing out, something new, or just that that with art and photography now, this new media thing has taken over a lot of what art is, presence and now, here, and they will rather be present and now with people in outer space. So that means that we really have to reformulate what is it then we do, if we don't do that.
Yeah.
That was a comment more, but that was interesting.
Okay, I will try to respond to that, and I think that the lesson is that we are not with others, not even when we meet them. That's what I understand. Because when you see this publicity saying, my mobile is my friend, is my heartaches, is my all those things. It makes me wonder if my heartaches exist. And I remember that some characters of Dostoevsky, I've met them more than people that I know for 10 years. So I go the opposite way, and I say that we never meet each other, that this thing is very dangerous, there is something which is true in it, but I can only take an even bigger sensitivity to, and a desire to really meet other people. And I feel that this is an ongoing process that will never end, and I will always try to go further.
This is one of the points, actually. Every time you get a new technology, it kind of makes you focus on the older one and really creates a need to resharpen the notion of what... I mean, when digital tools that come and digital media, I mean, we are forced to rethink the theatrical situation and the question of presence. And we should see that this, instead of something threatening, but as a kind of new challenge. And we cannot, I mean, like Dieter said, we cannot just continue these, binary oppositions. Either you're present and I'm talking to you and we're present, and it cannot go via any mobile extension. So, yeah.
Thank you. Just have a remark regarding the panel, and then I have a question for you, Dieter. This is something also observed in Aarhus, which we had people presenting from other sectors of life than performing arts. And I think there is a good contrast between, for instance, the depth of philosophical presentation of Alexandros to autistic shallowness of the internet world. That's sometimes because we are so much in our small circle of artists, this sort of contrast might be actually interesting as a wake-up call. But a question, you said we better go for transnational identity in Europe. I'm not trying to be ironic. However, I would like to know, where is Europe? How far its boundaries and threshold extends? And who defines that? Anders Fogh Rasmussen, which thinks he has to go bomb other people in order to keep us secure? Or the artists like yourself, who try to create dialogue and exchange with other parts of the world? And what you said, very interestingly, try to get involved with things and people that we don't know. I think that really needs to be defined when we're talking about international and transnational identity.
It's such a good question, and when I was investigating this hemispheric institute, it's very clear that it has Northern American and Southern American. You could think, okay, Europe and Africa. And of course, I think we should collaborate in all ways possible, but what I refer to is that we actually have a tradition in Europe with state-supported theatre, which is quite unique. So I think in Europe, in the sense of the European community and of money and organizations, there are a lot of things that are similar and where there's power and institutions. So in that degree, I'm not talking so much on the artistic level. I'm more talking about how can we use some of that power and institutions and transform them.
I would like to continue a little bit this dialogue that you're having. I come from Greece, and Greece at the moment there's a genocide almost, and we haven't had subsidies for the last 3 years and no money in the arts. So are you insinuating, are you implying that Denmark will be happy to contribute to the Greek arts? Like, is that transformed into a solidarity network? We will be very happy to accept.
Actually, I think it's a quite relevant question, and I have to say that I also was just appointed as a chairwoman for the National Committee of Stage Arts. So we're like having 9% of all the money, and we are constantly discussing this about who can apply, what are the criteria. So I think it's actually a very, very relevant question. And yes, I do think that some of the Northern Europe big theatres. I would rather point at the Royal Theatre. This is like a pattern, you know, small, poor artists would point at them and say, take a responsibility for the theatre in Athens. So yes, that would be a very, very good suggestion.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ingrid Handeland from Norway. I'm working in Audiences Norway. I have a degree in philosophy, and I tried to work in the National Theatre in Oslo for many years, trying to make it more audience-focused and trying, because I love theatre, and I would love many more people to love theatre. So I would like to pick up on this issue if social media and what you were talking about is really shallow, if it's dangerous or not. You said, what was your name again? Alessandro? Yeah, okay. You said that the tools that haven't so far been integrated, that's the tools that are still visible to us. I mean, for many people working in theatre who are so afraid of what's going on out there, these tools are visible because it's not integrated. People are afraid of it. And as long as theatre still goes on being afraid of what goes on outside the building, it's going to lose audiences exactly in the same way as you talked about. It's going to be for old medieval people and not even young white people. That's my point.
Christopher, do you have a comment on this? I mean, how some of the artists, performing artists, are actually embracing these new technologies instead of being afraid and shutting them out?
Yeah, well, I can comment. I would like to invite Alexandros as well, maybe, to make a comment. But, well, in general, there are, of course, different aspects of this. Dealing with, of course, one aspect is that within dance education, for instance, where I work as well, where the situation is very much that you go into a dance studio and you work and you train and you leave all the digital and all the online activities outside, and then you go train, and then you go out and into your ordinary, normal world that includes social media, mobile phones, and so on. And there's a thing there in between. Maybe it could be interesting to include more online and participatory thing within inside a dance education. But generally, I think that within the dance community, but people working with that are dance artists in Europe and internationally, they are very much embracing these new technologies, and there are a lot of, as I see it, of course, potential with that, creating a lot of collaborative artistic exchange. I'd just like to mention briefly, there's a project going on that actually Reumert Salon that initiated the Dance Tech project. He's working on a project called Meta Academy Project, where he's exploring how to do with presence as well, with your comment there. He's calling it, or he's about distributed presence, and trying to collaborate with the embodied knowledge, and to do with the present body, the body here and now of dancers and dance scholars, to have an exchange with, for instance, just like a video chat system, for instance Skype or something like this. They have artistic exchanges with these technologies that are very interesting, and that, of course, the artistic and the dance community is very interested about.
So maybe it's more a question of generations instead of theatre being hostile towards these new technologies.
I would like to respond as well. The first thing is that you said that if we don't do this, then we will lose people. So in a way, we've already introduced a sense of emergency. And I think that one of our priorities, it's not that I disagree, but I would like to add some other points just to make it more balanced. First of all, I think that it is not only quantity that interests us, it's also quality. And if you want people starting doing things and use technology, because otherwise they will lose the public. Instead of waiting for people that feel real desire to work with these tools, so make works that have a meaningful use of these, because we cannot invent people having this desire to work with these tools. We have to let this thing happen. And I wouldn't suggest that it is shallow or superficial to all this. The phenomenon of the social media is first and foremost a really overwhelming emergence of desire for the other. I wouldn't imagine a better metaphor for this need to go towards the other. And the fact that there is so much pleasure in that should be respected. It is like those who talk against television, and I simply say that if we turn off the television for 1 week, then we will see how many people will survive at the end of the week. So, in my opinion, we should just look at things without too much judgment and try to reconnect with the real desire. It is not about audience development. It is about creating real relationships that are always trying to find the real reason, the real need, and the desire that made this sparkle.
This is just a comment, part of this, what we call remediation. I mean, you get a new kind of community via the social media, but then it makes you rethink what is the theatrical community. So this is how it works, and it doesn't have to, one doesn't have to exclude the other.
Just picking up on Alexandra's point here of real connections, I just want to put a question to the panel here. What if we're not in a crisis? What if we're in a unique moment in history where never have we had so many people being creative? 5,000 dancers in a community interchanging their art and doing stuff together. When have we ever in civilization had such a social connectivity between artists? There's a great statistic saying that 1/3 of all Danes play an instrument. 1/3 of all Danes play an instrument. Not too many years ago, it was the aristocratic part of society who played instruments, played lutes and fenced and rode their ponies. Now it's everybody. Now 5,000 dancers, active dancers. Yes, they have no audience. Well, that's life. They have 5,000 real connections, real colleagues to interchange and create art with. Who cares about audience? Maybe that's a false dichotomy. I mean, what is this boring things of a theater? We have an idea of a dead audience who can't even connect to their friends, who sit all by themselves, left alone in a dark room looking at somebody performing. Maybe that's the problem. Let's drop the audience, kill the audience, forget about audience. This is a unique time in history. We have a lot of artists, we have a lot of creators, we never had so many.
Thank you very much.
Everybody actively. Artists, then we don't need audiences.
Every man is an artist, as Joseph Boyce said. So I was just thinking, now you're actually pointing to the fact that the artists actually have the power to declare the state of emergency. Like Alexander, you asked, who has the power to declare the state of emergency? Actually, the artists, they have the power if they only want to take it, or could we pass a question on to the panel? Do we have a crisis?
I understand your point, but I would insist that that there are big groups of people in society that over their tax is paying into this thing, theater and art, and which we're not offering anything for. So for me, the whole way of saying that as long as we are at all subsidizing art, it has a responsibility to reach out to more people than it does right now. So this is more a question of including more people, and I think it's very significant how bad we've been in Denmark compared to Britain and to Sweden in that context. So I think the amount of people that are sitting in this dark room is a very, very limited. I mean, women past 50, great. But I do think there are more people that would maybe not sit in the dark room, but that would participate in all sorts of stage art. Because I don't think your concept of theatre is very relevant anymore. I think a lot of theatre defines itself as another thing than people sitting in the dark and being pacified. So, and I think that we have a whole range of possibilities that we don't use, at least in Denmark, with our minorities. And I think that should be connected to our international work. I think it's absurd that people who speak other languages in this country, that have other backgrounds, cultural, that they don't have professional stage art offered. Because as long as we pay for it, they should also be included. So, I know it's a quite moral point that people should be offered something. I know.
But people, they want to contribute also. I mean, we see really a growth in participatory kinds of art, and we see this intervention. I mean, there are very different artistic strategies, and I mean, to your point, you could also say that we have a highly educated audience today. If everybody is creative or can play the drums or anything, I mean, they really could be appreciated and also sit in the dark and maybe also take part. I mean, but I think it's an interesting point about this notion of everybody being creative. I mean, Peter, from your point of view, I mean, it's just not a question of art or not art. I mean, this is just a question about people, and that they're all creative and they're using their whatever tools they have to be creative.
Yeah, I'm just listening here. It's extremely interesting, the discussion. I'm thinking from some of the other, for example, the hotel business, Airbnb, who everyone now rents out a room. I was at Folkemødet this weekend, a Danish national politic lobbyist thing at Bornholm, where Click a Taxi, which is a taxi driving thing, I talked to one of the drivers there who said that they would be introducing a taxi app where everyone can drive their taxis, so they would kind of bypass the whole institution of hotels, taxis, television, have Netflix, so it's coming to every industry, I think. So therefore, this is interesting. So can everyone be an artist? Can everyone have their, if there's a platform available where people can offer their act or whatever, would that be, I don't know, just putting it out.
Everybody can be creative, but that's not the same as being an artist, or is it? Somebody...
I'd like to mention that in New York City, we have principal dancers at City Ballet and American Ballet Theater who are making exceptionally effective use of Twitter. They have large followings. Their names are Ashley Bowder, principal dancer at City Ballet, and Daniel Simkin at American Ballet Theater. This, in fact, has increased the audience and brought down the median age. City Ballet itself has also made extensive use of social media and probably has the lowest median age of any ballet company performing in the world.
Thank you.
I'd just like to reconnect, if that's okay, to the participatory art and the possibility of exchange. I feel also, of course, there's so many creative possibilities with these technologies and exchanges, and looking at, of course, remixing cultures. That is not a new thing, but is encouraged and fostered by the use of new social media and such as YouTube, or where people are, the concept of the consumer becoming a producer thing is quite vivid, and where there is a possibility to look at those aspects also in the creative environment of, for instance, dancers and choreographers. So I made a choreographic project where within this Swede dance community, I started remaking stuff that they had uploaded on the website, and shared and recorded my own performances, dance performances, and uploaded them to the web community, and encouraged others in the community to comment on that or remake that other members remade, etc. So sort of a recycling of dance documents. And I feel that there was always this exchange going on and a dialogue going on, which was really encouraging for me as a choreographer and a dance maker to have that exchange all the time. That was just a comment.
Dita, you had a comment on this?
Yes, just a short comment on this. I think big challenge we have that all our words and our concepts are so quickly taken over. So that, I mean, it seems hard to say participation when you've seen that the cell phone ad. And you say creativity, and I remember 1 month ago, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, who's a politician here in Denmark, he was on the television saying, I do know now I need to improve my performance and to find a bigger authenticity. So I would actually just throw it out as like an ever going on problem that some of these notions that are developed within art, that the circulation is getting quicker and quicker. So that things that you said a year ago that seemed sort of to have an artistic value, now they're already taken over and turned into market. And I don't really know what can we do. We can't do anything about that. But then what do you do with the language? Because every time now I hear the word participation, I actually associate a little, yeah.
Yeah, it has become like a kind of a cynical social tool. I mean, where politics fail, then art can take over and make a kind of a nice little social tidy up as a means of, and you can use art as a strategy of social inclusion. And I really think you have to be aware of this. But I mean, there's you pointed to it in the beginning, Alexandros, that the economic forces are very quick to capitalize on new strategies, I mean, participation has become the buzzword in our commune, and we just have to be aware of this.
Yeah, I would like to to say something that all this time I hear the word reflection upon crisis and whether there is crisis or whether there is no crisis, and that reminds me a lot of the period before the crisis in Greece, when we were talking about the crisis and whether there is crisis or not. And there is a moment when that you actually, everything changes around you, and then it's not a crisis anymore. I don't know how to define it. Then you start judging, you start thinking how to define it. So what is really interesting is that within this globalized world, we use the same terms, but we actually mean completely different things. And so we also, within the function of mobility, artists' mobility, we tend to think that we all belong in Europe, in a European network where people move around and exchange ideas. And in fact we do, but we do to a certain extent. And it's really interesting to start thinking about things that separate us, which is extremely good, because this is then, I think it is then that the artist becomes a messenger. I'm going back to what Alexandros was saying about the Greek tragedy mechanisms. So there is, the artist is someone who comes from a place of a crisis to tell the other people a narrative, basically, of a narration of what has happened. So this I think this way to perceive the art and the role of the artist also within the new European Union, where we do share a lot in common, but we also share a lot many differences. But there is always art and artists and those messengers that can bring the message from a place of crisis, and then we can he can probably help us to redefine our crisis and whether we are on the same.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very good point. It helps clear that art is not just a question of celebrating this Twitter creativity and not to say anything against Twitter, but just to remind us that the artist is coming with a message and asking us to rethink how we use the words and rethink what is a community, and all the time destabilizing the ground in opposition as this very capitalist tendency towards unifying and marketing everything.
I just want to talk about the problem of representation, which somehow touches on what you presented today. As a function of the artist is to play, putting together the child desire to play. So art does what it does. That means does nothing else than what it wants to do. And in that sense, we cannot think of adding to the artist and the artist's role any other position than letting it be what it is. No participation desires, no creating more audience, no functionalization of any kind. I mean, as soon as we start to force the artist to do this and that, then we kill the artist. So that's why art is super dead in some places here in Denmark. So I think one of the responsibilities we have is to rethink representation and rethink the meaning of art, because it has been taken away somehow from us with all these deals of being functionalized to the society, because we are also not sustainable. That's a fact, and that's why we pay taxes, to not be sustainable. And now, to what you say about creating another national theatre or another national institution, the problem with nationalities and nation is that ends in identification all the time. And we don't want to create new identification forces. I think we need to try to de-identify, even though we do it with the whole European community, is the de-identification of anything, of any institution or any desire to work together. It's by de-identifying, not by identifying again. Because that's what's creating the exclusion and the grouping and the belonging to small network societies and network communities. This is equal clubbing. Let's meet in together again. So doing that again is super dangerous. So what we need to think, I think, is like in which way we de-bureaucratize the institution and defend the institution in this self-entrepreneurship life that we are forced to enter. We know all the tools to battle that, but the economic system doesn't have a brain. We have the brain, so somehow we need to challenge that with our own desires.
Maybe, Alexandra, you have a point, because she was actually pointing to something you were saying at the beginning, when you talked about that art should liberate us from meaning, and just and let it be, like you said, the art should just be like the child playing.
I must admit I started having a headache because there's so many issues that it all explodes. So first of all, I must say that I feel really awkward when we are talking about a moralized approach, a qualification of what is art, and we use that argument that it's the money of the contributors. I don't remember the term in English. Because if we attach these moralizing arguments to the judgment of the arts, then we've completely castrated the whole thing. I mean, I really think that if there's a place that we can see all the darkness of our humanity, it must be at least the world of the arts. So we must leave it exposed to a dangerous situation. And I would never accept, in any case, as a criteria, the number of the people that attended a spectacle. Because, too simply, we know that there's a lot of people that watch TV. That doesn't mean that a troupe that makes something for 5 people is not as important as TV. We can talk about the influence, we can talk about the social factors, but it is really funny because at the time of Van Gogh, almost nobody saw him as a painter. The names of the people that were really popular at the time, we don't even know them. So it is there's so many issues. So I don't say that
I wasn't at all talking about the amount of people. But what I see, for instance, having sitting in the National Theatre School's election committee, seeing actresses, I have seen for years the difficulty of non-white people entering state educations. So I'm really talking about what is represented on the stage, whose stories. I'm not talking about the amount of people should be higher.
Because in the beginning of the argument...
That's not... Okay. I'm just saying everyone here in the community is paying as part of their tax, so they should have the possibility of seeing themselves, their own stories represented somehow. So I'm not talking about, yes, let's have 25 or 38% of everyone seeing, or that's not.
And the other thing that I would like to point out is that, first of all, in Greece, we have a lot of people that have a similar sensitivity. The fact of having an identity means that if I am something, then you are not that something that I am. So we should avoid any kind of identification. But I must tell you that right now there are societies, and I'm coming from one society, that has been attacked in a generalized way. And because we have a history where all this identity thing with dictatorships, etc., has been used in a really peculiar way, we don't have a we able to react. So I understand the sensibility, but I don't think that because this thing is dangerous, we shouldn't do it. But actually, there's nothing which is not dangerous. And the proof is that one, that the narrative that the left has been rightly, for a good reason, defending, has weakened even more the reaction. So we cannot react as a society because the we, that notion of we, is very, very problematic. And when politicians use it, it sounds so meaningless. And artists didn't do something in order to open the symbols and to reclaim them and put questions to them, not just a finished answer, but something more dynamic. They just didn't. They left it. They left it to the others. And the others, they just did their job. So I think it is much more complicated, and sadly enough, we will never find any kind of security in that field and in many other fields as well. In my opinion, right now, there must be people that fight within the institutions, but we need to refine this actual basic, real connection of somebody who's dancing and somebody who's watching, or somebody who talks and somebody who listens. Very basic things. What is the paradise for us? What would it be? It would be that we have real public, and we don't need the money, we don't need this filtering, this mind control, this process of mutilating the artistic process slowly, in order to make artistic production fit in a narrative that has goals that are strangers to artists. Nevertheless, and I will end here, I do not believe that artists are just doing the things. They do one thing, they read it, and then they do it again. Otherwise, it's just like a reaction, a reflex. And when I say read and think, I don't think with only with this part. We think with everything we have. And the process is very complicated. And we ourselves, we introduce a lot of problematic and dangerous notions, moralistic, politic in a broader sense, dynamic, etc., etc.
I think we have to wrap it up, and I cannot make a concluding remark because we have covered such huge ground. But as Alessandro he said, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So I do hope there has been a little quality put into your bodies about the new role of the performing artist today. I just need to make some First of all, I forgot to, I have to thank Republic for hosting all of these discussions today and the next couple of days. And besides Bikubenfonden, I also have to mention that the Culture Point North and the Nordic Kulturfond has supported the whole event of the Nordic Performing Arts Days. And then I have to thank you and also Monaditno for moderating this session. Thank you very much for that. Just very practically, when you go out of here, there will be a small new circus platform that you can watch on your way over to the reception. Take a folder and it will describe the young artist performing there. And you have to walk over to the big stage, or the big foyer at the other side, and there's a reception with drinks and food, and we're going to have some fun. And then we go and see performances. And the ones who wants to go to Betty Nansen to see the Trust performance has to contact Jeremy. And the bus leaving for Husets Teater will leave at 7 o'clock.